Okay, so as Gila just mentioned, we just began chapter 1. We finished the book, but we began it from chapter 3, as was Rabbi Steinsaltz's recommendation. So now we're learning chapter 1 and chapter 2. And the main idea here is, number one, that we live in a multi-dimensional world. And it's not just the world of me and God, but it's really the world of me and this world, and the three upper worlds that are beyond this world, and then the celestial world where God sits also on his throne of glory. And it's important to note that because we can affect those worlds as well as those worlds can affect us. Now, when I say worlds, remember, we're speaking about the four worlds that are the world of action, which is this world. Above it is the world of formation. Above it is the world of creation. And above it is the world of emanation. We said that the main difference between those four worlds is that this world is mainly evil and just a little bit of good. We have to really dig through the evil to find the good. The world of formation is almost the opposite, where there's mostly good, but a little bit of bad. It's also the world of angels. So you have like bad angels that have, again, no independent power. They still bad, like the angel of death, the Satan, and so on. Above that is the world of creation that is entirely good, and that's where our souls come from. And then above that is the world of emanation that is beyond good. That's where God really can dwell almost unreservedly. Although angels are above us, and even the souls that have yet to be born, or that passed and are dwelling in the Garden of Eden, are in an even higher world, in the world of creation, we can still attain a higher level in this world. So by doing a mitzvah, by connecting to God, because then you are one with God, who's above all these worlds. See, souls don't have mitzvahs to perform. They're souls. Angels neither. So they can't really connect with God and his innermost desire. But we can. So even though we are in the world of action, we can connect with God. And that connection, as we've spoken about, has an impact on all of the higher worlds, to the point that the angels tremble when they see a light that comes from a mitzvah, a light from self-control, and that the return for this mitzvah comes from God himself through those worlds and is really infinite. So it's important, again, to remember this connection that we have between all the worlds, especially between this world and the upper world. That was the main idea. And now we can continue at the bottom of page 2. Does anyone want to read? And again, I encourage discussion, questions, so feel free to speak your minds too.
Okay.
Please, anyone?
Sure.
Bottom of page 2.
Every aspect,
Yeah.
okay. Every aspect of human existence is therefore made up of both matter and spirit. And at the same time, in the world of action, the spiritual is subordinate to the material, in keeping with the fact that the laws of nature determine the face and form of all things and serve as focal points for all processes. In this world, the spirit can appear and perform its role only on the solid basis of the workings of what we call the forces of nature. In other words, no matter how abstract or divorced it is from so-called reality, thought still belongs to the world of action.
Right, and that's how confined the world of spirit is in this world. Again, going back to the point that this world is mainly physical, mainly limited and confined. The spirit or the holiness of this world is very, very hidden, and at the same time also very imprisoned. Now, we have the ability, on the other hand, also to release that spirit, release the holiness in the most minute things. So, for example, when I eat an apple and I say a blessing over this apple, I've released the spirit within the apple, that spark of godliness through the blessing. If I use then the energy that the apple gave me to do good, again, I've released that spark of energy, and it feels now liberated. Divinity then is unleashed. But still, before I eat the apple, before I say that blessing, before I use its energy to do good, that spirit is very, very limited. Same now with this table. Same now with this book. Before we actually study Torah on this table, the table felt as if it was just an assembly of matter. The spirit within the table certainly felt very confined. But now we're studying Torah on this table, so the table's spirit is liberated. It thanks us. By the way, it says that when Mashiach will come, Even Mikir Tizak, that stones will shout from the walls. What does that mean? What it means is that when Mashiach will come, we'll be walking in the street. If we are thinking good thoughts, the stones will shout and say, thank you so much. You're elevating me thanks to your good thoughts. You're using me, but you're also freeing my spark, my divine spark, my spirit. If we're thinking bad thoughts, the stone will shout at us and say, how dare you walk on me? You know better than me. You're actually lower than me with those bad thoughts. So there's that spirit in everything. By the way, which reminds me, if speaking of Rabbi Steinsaltz, but as you all know, Rabbi Steinsaltz was very forthright and cut to the chase, and he would awaken people in many ways through this shock treatment sometimes, as they call it. But I recall that I was once with him in the old city of Jerusalem in his synagogue in Tzemach Tzedek. He was appointed as the rabbi there by the Lubavitch Rebbe, but there was a group of students, and there was a student who challenged Rabbi Steinsaltz, to say the least, by saying, hey, what do you think about the status of Jerusalem today? Jerusalem really should become the international city that it really is. This is this young student preaching Rabbi Steinsaltz of his view of Jerusalem. Why are the Jews claiming ownership over it, and so on and so forth. And Rabbi Steinsaltz so characteristically said, the real question, my dear student, is not what you think about Jerusalem. It's about what Jerusalem thinks about you. And then he was very harsh with him. But then you saw that it really meant a lot to him. He said, look, on the stones that you're walking on right now, walked Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, their wife, King David. They walked on these stones. And when they walked on those stones, the stones were celebrating, saying, wow, what merits do we have that these giants walk on us? And now fast forward, and they see that you are walking on these stones. What do you think these stones are saying? It's not about what you think of these stones. It's what these stones, what Jerusalem thinks about you. But again, he awoke that student, and he took it in a good way. But almost to share that exact message that, hello, you live in a two or multi-dimensional life. It's not just about what you think about the stones, and you can think that you can use these stones or view these stones however you want. No, there's God in these stones. There's a voice in these stones. And that voice is speaking to you. And what do you think that voice is saying if you're using these stones in a negative way? And it's not just true for stones. Again, it's true for this table. It's true for that apple. It's true for everything that we use. There's a spirit within it. And this is exactly the point. That's very confined at first. It's so confined, as Rabbi Stein says, that even thoughts, which is a spiritual thing, is confined because very often our thoughts are channeled towards this world of action instead of being channeled towards the celestial heavens. And it not only, by the way, imprisons the thoughts, but imprisons us. Because as we all know, it's all in the mind. And if the mind thinks in a confined way, so the person will be in a confined status and will feel imprisoned. A lot of stress and anxiety comes from that. I'm not talking about clinical, that's not my department. But a lot of the regular stress comes because we're confining our thoughts. Instead of releasing them, we're attaching them to the world of action, as Rabbi Steinsaltz says. If we would attach them to God himself, to our service of God, we would be free. You know, the great story of Mendel Futerfas, one of the Hasidic Jews that we mentioned quite often. He was thrown into the gulag and had a terrible life on the surface. He lost 4 of his children to terrible diseases. He himself lost his father while his mother was pregnant with him. And then he was in the gulag for many, many years just for being Jewish in communist Russia. And you can imagine, the gulag is the gulag. It's not even like an American prison. I've been to American prisons as a rabbi, not as a prisoner, but I've been to American prisons. I can tell you it's no fun there. especially maximum security ones. But there's a story, I don't know if I've shared in the past, about Mendel Futterfass sitting in the Gulag for lunch with all of the other inmates. And they all began to cry. One said, I lost my entire business when I was thrown into this prison. The other one says, I lost all of my skills and talents. I love basketball, whatever it is. The other one said, I lost this, I lost that. Everyone was crying, except for Mendel Futterfass, who was smiling. And they asked Mendel, you must have been a loser before the Gulag. So you remained a loser, you lost nothing, and therefore you're smiling. He said, no, actually, I was a very successful businessman too, which he was. I had a big factory and I lost it all. But what I truly had before the Gulag is what I have now. Before the Gulag, I was a servant of God. Now in the Gulag, I'm a servant of God. So I'm smiling because that always stays with me. That's a free person. That's a person who's not confined by the world of action because his thoughts, his entire being is not there. It's connected to God himself. So that's how you release in the very state of being your own divine spark. But just as it exists in you, again, it exists in every item in this world. And we have the power, unlike angels or souls, we are the only ones who have the power to release that divine spark and truly turn this world of action into something a little bit more spiritual.
That's a good message for Passover.
It's a good message for life. Yeah. One of the great Hasidic rabbis would say that God made the spiritual material. That's how he created this world. But our task is to make the material spiritual. And begins here, of course. It begins with everything we interact with. So that's what Rabbi Steinsaltz is writing about here. Okay, we can continue. Otherwise, please, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts, disagreements, questions. Please, Mark. Yes.
Yes. I'm going to say that something that I thought was not too out of the far left field, but many people in the communist culture would argue that this approach is really designed to allow you to live in today's terrible world and not be consumed by the terror that we're facing. That it's really a manipulation to allow us to face what is happening in our lives. And right now we have it very well, even with Israel, with, but back in the Eastern Europe in the 1800s with the pogroms and everything else, and the poverty, you need something to hold on to.
Right.
It's just more of...
Right. Karl Marx famously said that religion is a crutch for the masses, right? Yes, I get that. But that's because Karl Marx lived in a world that was completely a world of action with a zero dimension to it. So the only way he can view that world is by judging it through his own perspective. We do that all the time. We judge the world through what's called extrapolation. The way we see the world is surely the world is. But that's the point of this book, not to see the world through any human being's eyes, but really it's through God's eyes. And then you don't see crutches. You also don't see the world religion, because Judaism is not a religion, but that's a discussion of itself. Right.
No,
Right.
externally.
Right. Exactly.
May I?
Right. Right.
I feel compelled
Yes,
to respond.
please.
In the depths of the horrors of what our IDF heroes are facing, they are davening. So as they are taking the action to protect our country, they are also taking the action to connect
Right.
with Hashem at the same time. It can be done
Right.
by our heroes.
That's right. And in many, many ways, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's because they do that they have the strength in the battlefield to persevere. So they're very much connected. And I think that sometimes it's also a question of terminology, really. Simple as that. Some people might not recognize the word spirit, which is the word we're using, or the word God. but they will speak about the universe. They'll speak about science in a irrational way. They'll speak about feelings, intuitions. Fine. So you name it in a different way. But I think even a Karl Marx recognizes that there's something greater. By the way, today at the age of 94 years old, the one who discovered the divine particle of creation passed away. But even a great scientist like that, I forget his name, Peter.
A physicist? Was he a physicist?
He was recognized globally. I think yes, he was a physicist. Peter something, would you know?
Gingy?
He passed away today at the age of 94, but even he was known for, as a physicist, discovering the divine particle of creation. In other words, the thing that is beyond, that exists within. Yeah. To well honor him. That's why I'm Googling his name, because he passed away today. Peter Higgs, Nobelist who predicted the God particle, dies at 94. Peter Higgs. Okay, yeah. By the way, I want to personalize this also because I think it's important. I know we're speaking about big ideas about the world and the world of action versus the world of formation and so on. And we're speaking about the divine particle and creation. This is true in our day-to-day lives. The only way you can truly be grateful is if you recognize the divine, even when it's bleak. The only way you can really overcome tense relationships is you recognize that there's a divine hand guiding that relationship. I often do this. I think I mentioned this, but when couples come and speak with me and they're fighting, I bring in a third chair. And I say, okay, this is your opinion. This is your opinion. Let's ask God's opinion. He's sitting right here. And then it can change the whole energy in the room because there's a divine particle even in those small layers of life. So I know we're talking about the macro, but about the micro. It's there too. Maybe it's there even more so, even more present.
How does God speak in that chair?
It depends on the couple, depends on the fight.
There's another strategy in psychology, which is the Gestalt method, which many of you may have heard of.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting with someone, with a couple, let's say, and they're fighting, you bring in a third chair.
Mm.
And the third chair is for each of them to sit in
Mm.
periodically
Oh,
in order to observe themselves.
oh
So
wow.
in order to develop insight.
Mm.
Now, I really like the idea of bringing God in because I think that there needs to be maybe a fourth chair
Right. In the Gestalt
to
method.
help
Yeah,
with insight.
for sure.
Maybe for kids.
Yeah.
Sibling rivalry.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's true in any form of relationship. Well, we forget. And sometimes we have to bring a chair to ourselves. So life might be overwhelming, but where's God in all of this? That's the way I'm seeing it. How about if I added God in the picture? Yeah. Okay, so that's to really personalize this message. Let's continue again, unless please speak up your minds too. Okay, let's go. Page 3, the world of action are ever. Amy, you want to continue? Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, Karen. The world of action, however, is only one world in a general system of 4 fundamental dimensions of being, or 4 different worlds, each with its own cosmos of varying essences. These 4 worlds have been called, in order from the highest to the lowest, emanation, creation, formation, and action. Thus, the world directly above ours is the world of formation. To understand the difference, one must first understand certain factors common to all 4 worlds. These factors were traditionally known as world, year, and soul. Nowadays, we would call them space, time, and self, experience of one's being. Each world is distinguished from the others by the way these 3 factors are manifested in them. For example, in our world, physical place is a necessary external element for the existence of things. It is the background against which all objects move and all creatures function. In the higher worlds, and also in the world of spiritual action, that which is analogous to space in the world of physical action is called a mansion. It is the framework within which various forms and beings converge and connect.
Right, let's stop there. So, so everyone lives within these three dimensions, not just in this world, but in the upper worlds too. Angels live within these three dimensions. Souls will live within these three dimensions. They're just the dimensions are different in each of those worlds. It's interesting, but the Kabbalists say that when God gave us the Torah, it says Vahar Ashan Kulo, that the entire mountain was filled with smoke. But they teach us that Ashan, the word for smoke, is really an acronym for these three words. Ayin stands for Olam, Shin stands for Shana, year or time, and then Nun stands for Nefesh, which means the self. Because what God was trying to do is bring the Torah to all of these three realms. The Torah wasn't given just for this world, or just for time, or just for the person. It's given to all three because we interact with all three. Right now, we're interacting with all three. Right now, we have a world, we have a room, we have a table, like we said, that we have that dimension. We have a time, and we the time of the class, and then we have the self that's involved in this learning. Every activity involves these three realms. And in many, many ways, a wholesome person is a person who can be wholesome and harmonize those three realms at all times. So that the deed that you are doing is harmonized with yourself. Very often they divorced. Or even the time is divorced with the self. I mean, a different time zone, people use that expression. I'm not here, so then you're not harmonizing with the world or with yourself. But the perfect harmony, and therefore the righteous, the tzaddik, lives in those three realms in a wholesome harmony. And that, in many ways, the goals that the world isn't divorced from the year, and the year isn't divorced from the self. Now, it's a very high bar to set for life, but it should be something that we strive, at least, if not all the time, that maybe some of the time. Now, again, and we can go into that, but the world as it is in this world, and the time as it is in this world, and the person as people are in this world, are completely different than they are in the world of formation, and the world of creation, and the world of emanation. Each world has its own definition of those three realms. But what's important to note is that all these three realms exist in each of those four worlds. I think, by the way, it's a good exercise, again, to personalize things, to make them as practical as possible. It's a good exercise to stop yourself twice a day, 3 times a day. If you want more, then find more. And ask yourself, am I in sync? Is the place I'm in, the world that I'm in right now, in sync with the time I'm supposed to be in it, and the being, most importantly, that is supposed to be in it or not? So to give you a simple example, if I'm right now, spoke about relationships. If I'm right now in an argument, I'm right now arguing. Am I even supposed to be with this person right now? On the phone or in person? Maybe the world is disharmonized here. And is my action, which is also connected to the world, it connect with my disagreement, my arguments, in sync with my soul really wants, with me? Or maybe I should take the high road. And this applies again to everything. So you can ask yourselves twice a day, 3 times a day, am I living in harmony with myself? Because to live in harmony with yourself means living in harmony with those 3 realms. Yes.
I think psychology borrowed or stole mindfulness,
Oh,
the concept of being present in the moment and connecting. In treating PTSD or in treating any kind of trauma, one of the first things you're going to do with somebody is you're going to ground them.
Mm.
You're going to say, where are you right now? Are you safe? Are you okay? Especially with all the trauma that's going on, is the grounding exercise, which
The
really
olam,
is-
the olam realm, right?
Right, exactly. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Mm,
Whether we're traumatized or not, which many of us are, most
Right.
of us are, it's to be mindful of what you, exactly the point of,
Mm.
am I in sync with myself? Do I know, am I okay? Am I here? What's going on? How can I focus? And how can I be in harmony with Hashem?
Mm.
So it's all part of the same exercise, really.
Beautiful. Yes, Mark.
Understanding what you've said about this layer, but we have 4 layers. I understand the individual, I understand time. I don't understand place in the other 3 levels. I can visualize it here, but as you go to the level of formation, creation, that's much more difficult to envision what place means.
Right. Because in many ways we are beyond place, also beyond time. But you're right. So I would define place in those worlds, or at least in the world of formation and the world of creation. The world of emanation becomes much more difficult because it's a world really that's only godliness. But the world of formation, the world of creation, I would say it's place that is vis-a-vis the characters involved. So you might not have a physical place because it's an abstract world at the end of the day, but you do have a place of soul versus soul, or angel versus angel. They together create some type of spiritual place, of environment, let's call it that way.
It's not Sedona.
It's not Sedona. Maybe it's the vortex of Sedona. You know, the vortex. Yeah. Yes.
Different worlds.
It's a great question. So from the book of the Zohar mainly, but also Sefer Yetzirah speaks about it, which might have been authored by Adam. Adam, the first being. Probably authored by Adam. But so it's quite a dominant theme in those books, and of course in many other books of Kabbalah. Book of the Zohar of 2,000 years ago, and the book of Yetzirah of 5,784 years ago. Yeah, good question. Yes.
It's not for us, right?
Yeah, I mean, Hashem is so present in that world. Hashem's light is so present that no soul even can sustain that. No, so that's a good question, because the souls of the righteous come from that world. So Moses comes from the soul. It's Adam, maybe, yeah. So who knows? Yeah. Yeah,
So
the Baba Chara.
the righteous can't enter that 4th dimension.
Can, because they're so selfless. Because they've lived their whole lives and their whole soul is Hashem, not them. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
People that are righteous in this world that migrate up and down.
Oh, they can be in those dimensions at the same time, or go up and down. Yes. Look, I believe that Lubavitcher Rebbe was like that. In fact, I have a dear friend by the name of Shmuley Green. His father was a professor at NASA. And he was a big Zionist. And he wanted to move to Israel. And he kept insisting on a move. And the Rebbe kept telling him, no, don't. At one point, the Rebbe wrote to him, I saw the letter, "Bashamayim eno nira li," that in heaven, it doesn't seem like you have to move to Israel right now.
Mhm.
In heaven, as if like the Rebbe was seeing how things are in heaven and telling him that's not the way it is in heaven. Don't mess with God. Bashamayim eno nira li.
Mhm.
Doesn't appear to me. It doesn't see. I don't see it in heaven. Eino nira li. Eino nira li. Sorry? That he doesn't seem that's his pathway. That's not his pathway to go to Israel now.
There is saying that the Rebbe was a prophetic person.
In many ways, yeah. Many ways. How do you define a prophet? That's a whole other thing. But surely the Rebbe spoke divine words. I don't know if he always saw the full picture and therefore said what he said. Sometimes just said what he said because those are the words that God put in his mouth.
Also, whenever I'm speaking, you say God did it.
Yeah, that's right. There's a story like that. If I want to go into it, I don't know if I've ever shared with you the story of Arik Sharon. Did I ever share it? Arik Sharon, who, as we all know, was a big general in the Israeli army before he became prime minister. In fact, he's the one who's credited with the victory of the Yom Kippur War and other battles. But Arik Sharon was once visiting the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's a powerful story. It's documented too. And the way he planned his visit was that he went to the Rebbe as his last stop in America, because he was anyway going to catch a flight from JFK back to Israel. So he decided, I'll go visit the Rebbe. The Rebbe is not too far away from JFK. And then from there, I'll go to JFK and catch my. When he went to visit the Rebbe, he says to him, I understand why you're looking at your watch all the time. Arik Sharon says, I have a flight to catch soon. So the Rebbe tells him, you'll stay here. We'll have a talk as we need to, and you'll catch the next flight. The Rebbe says, you'll catch the next flight. You'll catch the next flight. So he sits and he misses his flight. The flight that he missed was hijacked by Algerian terrorists. It's documented again. So it turns out the Rebbe saved his life. So during his next visit to the Rebbe, he went and he said, Rebbe, I have two things to tell you. First of all, thank you for saving my life. But secondly, I have a complaint to file. If you knew that the plane was going to be hijacked, why didn't you save all the passengers? Why just me? And the Rebbe said, you think I knew? When I told you to stay, those were the words that God put in my mouth. So very often, that's how the righteous function. They're so aligned that what they say is what God says. That they see it? Not always. But what they say is what God says. And I saw that with the Rebbe many, many times, many stories like that. Well, Rabbi Steinsaltz saw it too. Anyway, so that's being aligned, and that's being aligned in those three realms too, right? They were completely aligned with the world, the time, and the souls, their selves. Olam Shana Nefesh.
Is there a way to?
Yeah, no, please. That's what it's about. We want you to ask as many questions as you want. Yes.
Is there a way to know?
Right. Is there a way to know whether you're aligned or not? Like you personally knowing?
Well, right.
Or others knowing about you? Yeah.
Well,
Mm.
I mean, you were talking about the counseling. So you have a third,
Right.
maybe God.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's a good question. For example, let's go back to the Rebbe, just because we used them as an example. Did the Rebbe know that he was in a state of complete alignment? I would think so. I think so. Just by the way, the definition, according to the Rebbe, of humility. Humility is not thinking of yourself less. It's not humility. Not bashing yourself. Humility is knowing exactly who you are. So the Rebbe knew he was aligned. But it's also knowing that if those skills and talents were given to someone else, he or she would have done a better job with them. That's the definition of humility. So I think the Rebbe knew his advantages, knew his qualities. So in many ways, I think you can know, you can at least sense it.
It's interesting to me that everything that comprises us as physical bodies never did belong to us. It came through
Right.
multiple generations of people that came before us. And so humility, as you were describing it, is, the brain of the gentleman who passed away, who created the concept of the divine spark
Mm-hmm.
within the domain of physics, probably knew he had lost his own, the ego disappears and the alignment is so focused that the gifts come from God
Very good.
without blockages, without
Right.
the appendages of ego,
Right.
if you will, that kind of.
Very good. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And again, that's connected to humility, ego, right? Yeah. Very good.
But it doesn't also have something to do with the intellect. That scientist that just died, he was developing his intellect day by day, year by year with his work. And the Rebbe was given the intellect and he kept growing it also.
Absolutely. It's growing not just the intellect, but every aspect of yours, right?
But when you have such a powerful intellect, we're not using the intellect.
Right.
Supposedly, we're only using 10% of what we actually have. And so, but when you have that much more intellect, you see better, you understand better, you can put things together better.
Right. Right. But it's not just the intellect, right? It's not just the intellect.
No.
It's much more than that.
The action,
Right.
but it's sparked by.
Yeah.
But
It's a spiritual intellect. Right. Rabbi Steinsaltz would say that he met in life many people with 5, 6, 7 PhDs, but they're the dumbest people he's ever met. Right.
Robert,
Yeah.
that Hashem did that without the name of him. He was supposed to curse Israel instead. He started speaking blessings. Was that Hashem's?
Sure. Absolutely. Sometimes you have a divine force that comes and takes over you. By the way, I know people, even simple people like businessmen, who were supposed to sign a contract and something, and then told them not to. That was God speaking through them, so they didn't. And then they found out that the guy was a manipulator and cheater, etc. So there are moments where you can definitely feel it. Whether you feel it continuously, like with the Rebbe, did the Rebbe continuously feel it? I think so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.